Couples by Pauline Kael from the collection Deeper into Movies, first published 1980. Nicholas and Alexandra is as obsequiously respectful as if it had been made about living monarchs who might graciously consent to attend the first performance. The 7 other movie versions of The Fall of the Romanovs that have played in this country have all concentrated on that mystic voluptuary Rasputin, for the good reason that he was the most dramatic character in the story. The new Sam Spiegel production, directed by Franklin J. Schaffner, sticks to those 2 royally dull people. Can one make a film about a stolid, well-intentioned couple whose self-preoccupation and need to prove themselves the leaders they weren't precipitated the butchery of millions of people in a war and a revolution? Can one make such a film without irony and expect the audience to become involved in the fate of the unfortunate couple? The picture moves in a stately progression from one fond smile they exchange to the next. Ah, yes, they care for each other. We can certainly see that. But far from developing sympathy for them, we get so fed up with their mediocrity that we wait for their execution to liberate us from the theater. We quickly perceive the film's point of view, that they are a decent, neurotic pair who might have been mildly happy, in a domineering wife and henpecked husband way, if only Nicholas hadn't been the head of state. But that seems to be the film's one point of view. Their lack of judgment and imagination is treated not as a horrible black joke of history, 2 dunces sitting on a volcano, or as a key to the eruptions, but merely factually, without interpretation. The 1932 version, featuring the Barrymores, was painfully stuffy too, but not so epically long, and when Rasputin, after being poisoned and shot and beaten, still refused to die, there really seemed to be something vile and supernatural about him. And since it was John Barrymore playing the Romanov, who, after all other measures failed, tried to choke Lionel Barrymore, done up in a long, straggling whiskers as Rasputin, there was also some humor to it, especially since Lionel's Rasputin looked so much like John's Svengali of the year before that the brothers seemed to have swapped beards. The new version provides no such divertissements. Rasputin was unquestionably the funkiest monk in history, and if you're not going to interpret the historical events, if you're not basically serious anyway, why not use the one wild joker in your hand and let the audience enjoy a fantastic character? Since Rasputin, played by Tom Baker here, did have mesmeric gifts, why not show them? In the 1938 French version, Harry Barr, as Rasputin, danced so orgiastically that the whole crazy, fetid period came alive. You could feel his powers, and they were sly and dirty. You knew why the Russian people hated him. This movie skips the triumph of that crude peasant libertine over the court. It avoids drama, and Rasputin's death is so badly staged that it seems not that he is hard to kill because he has so much rotten life in him, but that his murderers are incompetent. This Russian court must surely be the least scintillating court in movie history. Before seeing the movie, I had always felt sorry for the Romanov family, simply because they were powerless and helpless when they were murdered. But when one is asked to witness over 3 hours of Russian history with no object but to feel sorry for them, one's sympathies dry up. Besides, leaden-spirited authenticity can kill sympathy fast, and there is not a calculated attempt to flatter the audience by showing the Romanovs to be one man's family in trouble, the 4 pretty, obedient daughters, so witless a troop of princesses they seemed to have grown up next door to Andy Hardy. It's hard to see how one can fail to be moved by a sick child on the screen, but the movie's assumption that we in the audience are more interested in the Tsarevitch's hemophilia than in the way that Rasputin, who treated the boy, became a ruinous political influence, stifles feelings of pity. The condescending assumption is that we're celebrity, royalty lovers who hunger for details of a sick boy's bleeding and don't care about the disintegration of a society. It's offensive to be put in the position of status-hungry voyeurs, eager to partake of the home life of the dullest of the czars. I think we're meant to revel in the imperial pomp and to identify with the little peoples wearing the jeweled crowns. But when the First World War and the Russian Revolution are reduced to events going on in the background of the stodgy life in the royal apartments, even if the intention isn't satirical, the results become so. Of the directors who came from TV, Franklin J. Schaffner has seemed to have the greatest sense of sweep and spectacle, and in The War Lord, the first 3/4 of an hour of Planet of the Apes, and Patton, he showed a marvelous command of large-scale visual imagery. No one in recent years has used the widescreen more effectively. But this picture, big though its effects often are, is visually square and solemn. The compositions are head-on and centered and lifeless. This may be a result of the conception, or it may be the inevitable consequence of the employment of the cinematographer Freddie Young, who has worked so long for David Lean that everything he does looks static and framed for hanging. Janet Sussman has a grave elegance as Alexandra, and one senses the presence of a fine actress, but her role is written so impersonally that we get very little insight into Alexandra's character or into what her husband sees in her. Of why he calls her Sunny, there is no hint. Quiet, refined Michael Jaston is submerged in the character of the weak Nicholas. Though it may be unfair to Jaston to say so, it does seem as if the least charismatic of monarchs were being impersonated by the least charismatic of actors. For emotion, Jaston widens his tiny eyes from time to time. In minor roles, Laurence Olivier, Harry Andrews, and Alan Webb show their professional stature, but Irene Worth, like Janet Sussman, is forced to show hers mainly by the regal assurance with which she wears her gowns. The two ladies are superbly accoutred. Their dresses, by Castillo, may be the only trace of art in the entire production. The script is the heart of the trouble. It's a lame script, lamely directed. You never believe anything that's going on, not the princess exposing herself to a soldier, not the transvestite luring Rasputin. You don't even believe in the revolution. One hesitates to blame the scriptwriter, James Goldman, with additional dialogue by Edward Bond, because in a Sam Spiegel production, this one originated in Spiegel's enthusiasm for popular biography by Robert K. Massey. The conception may be his. There's no point in belaboring the writers for the clunky lines that get laughs. They must have heard the laughter too, and if Lenin and Trotsky and Stalin sound as silly as ancient Greeks passing the time of day in a movie epic, how should revolutionaries talk in a movie in which they are walk-ons? Michael Bryant's tight-faced Lenin is photographed so that he looks like the statues of Lenin, and this Lenin behaves like a statue. When it is decided to concentrate on the family life of a family of dullards, how should anybody talk? When Nicholas of Russia asks his Alexandra, "How did I go wrong?" we don't know where to point. So far, it has never failed that when you're depressed after a bunch of expensive clinkers, this time, after Nicholas and Alexandra, the gang that couldn't shoot straight, $, Star-Spangled Girl, and Happy Birthday Wanda June, a little picture sneaks in from left field. Renee Taylor and her husband, Joseph Bologna, are a comedy writing team with a talent for revealing the emotional desperation of loud-mouthed characters. The Bologna's comedy is a variation on the skit style of Nichols and May, but applied to the psychological patterns of ethnic groups. They don't seek merely to entertain you with the absurdities of Jewish and Italian misbehavior. Their object, possibly their unconscious object, is to find beauty under the ugliness. It's not easy to find. That they succeeded is what makes Made for Each Other the most satisfying comedy of the year. There hasn't been much competition, though the first half of Bananas was almost up with the best of the Marx Brothers. Woody Allen's style of comedy overlaps that of the Bolognas, but he turns being Jewish into a hang-up, while they satirize ethnic hang-ups for remedial purposes. They are perhaps the ultimate idealists among comedy writers. They want people to come clean with each other, and they assume that there is a naked honesty that can be reached. The movie is conceived as if it were an extended encounter session. Its rationale is that if you tear away neurotic defenses, you will get to the true person, who will be free to love. This is a less sophisticated approach than Woody Allen's gamesmanship about those defenses, but it has a romantic appeal. The Bologna's naive view of character could, a few movies hence, turn into soggily sentimental fake depth, but it nevertheless gives this work unexpected sweetness. A psychological view doesn't have to be large, or sensible either, to function in drama, especially in comedy. At this point in their writing careers, the Bologna's belief in the dignity of psychological nakedness is what saves their work from grossness. The grossness is an omnipresent threat. The people in this movie have a lot of lungs, and they yell and stumble around and make fools of themselves. But our laughter at them isn't cruel, because it's the laughter of recognition of what, in the Bologna's view, makes them behave like maniacs. As a writing team, the Bolognas are a balancing act. Their comedy has the advantage of a double sexual perspective, since their subject here is the coming together of a man and a woman, played by themselves, who haven't been able to find a way to live with themselves or anyone else. The balancing keeps the story in motion. Each character, in turn, messes things up and is seen through by the other. The lovers are in their 30s. Pandora Gold, a tatty, bleach-blonde, failed actress who tries to be sprightly, and Gigi Penimba, a seminary dropout, a grubby misfit in personnel at work. Pandora has been dumped on so many times that she looks older than she is, and Gigi is so frightened of everything that he looks younger. The background to their problems is the lunacy of their families. The Bologna's technique is to turn psychodrama into vaudeville, to show us the comic side of suffering, but not as a put-down. The burlesque is a clarification of the character's mechanisms, psychodrama heightened. I prefer Woody Allen's throwaway style, and the jokes from out of nowhere. But he sets up comic situations, such as the courtroom scene in Bananas, and walks away from them so Bananas doesn't build, and by the end everyone has one run down. Made for Each Other is fully worked out and grows in feeling, so that by the end the comedy has become bigger, not smaller. The clowns have become people, and the audience goes out smiling. It's Frank Capricorn updated. The writer's attitudes are Freudian, sub-Freudian, really, since the movie accepts the neurotic person's simplified view that he has been molded by the madness of his parents. But their observation has a quirky peculiarity to it that saves them from the mechanical use of this dogma, which has become standard in TV drama. In the movie of Lovers and Other Strangers, for example, which they wrote and, after its purchase, lost control of. The Italian father, played by Richard Castellano, was sexually frustrated by his stony wife, who, however, enjoyed stuffing him, so he ate his way through life. So far, orthodox sub-Freud. But when his second son was getting married, the father, handing him a present of money, explained that, though it might appear to be more than the first son had received, it wasn't. He had taken inflation into account, so the sums were really equal. As he awkwardly explained this, the overstuffed, sad-eyed man's feelings of love and his consideration for his sons came out in the clumsy, prosaic words. You couldn't help laughing, and yet your laughter brought you closer to him. That's the distinctive quality of the Bologna's comic style. Though, in toto, Lovers and Other Strangers was not much more than a pleasant entertainment, it had scenes that showed a special feel for ethnic comedy and for family life. In that movie, the material was shoved into old movie formulas, the best characters de-emphasized, and the ethnic tones confused by Hollywood-style casting. Made for Each Other is clearly not just remnants of the writer's intentions, but their intentions realized. Joseph Bologna acts natural and is acceptable because he handles the material so well. Renee Taylor, however, is a gifted and accomplished performer with a 5-octave emotional range. She has appeared in movies before in small roles, but she was deployed so unattractively that it was impossible to guess that she was a knocked-out original. No woman on screen has ever done anything quite like Pandora's expression of stupefied disbelief at what a fast nothing it was after she and Gigi have had sex in his car. Her Who Am I nightclub routine is so rambunctiously awful, and yet her face while she's doing it is so eager to please that the sequence is reminiscent of Marilyn Monroe's That Old Black Magic number in Bus Stop. Renee Taylor's greatest asset in this role is the Cinderella-like transformation of coarseness into softness. The term vulnerability can't be avoided here, because it is essential to the theme, which is the necessity for these two to stop protecting themselves in the clinches, to be vulnerable, and to help each other to be vulnerable. The movie believes that there is a kingdom of heaven you get to if you open yourself to it. If Made for Each Other seems to belong to Miss Taylor, and to be her personal triumph, it is because she expresses this theme so deeply in her very bones, and makes you believe in it, for the duration of the movie anyway. Up until the 50s, although color was being used for westerns and spectacles and musicals, comedies could be shot in black and white in a simple, functional manner that brought out the style of the performers. Now that the future sale of movies to TV is a prime consideration in movie financing, color is almost mandatory. Yet no one seems able to find a visual style in color that helps to bring out comic values. Even our best comedies tend to look shoddy and fancy, like TV commercials, because the color and the color design aren't organic to the material. You can see the cinematographer desperately blurring a foreground here and a background there, trying for movement and pleasing tones and variety, while the characters talk in bed or walk along a dirty, dark street. The simplicity and stylization of black and white made it easy for the director to control the situations and eliminate everything he didn't need. Great comedies, such as Keaton's, often look startlingly abstract. Now comedy is drowned in colors that distract from it, and the actions lose their clarity. In the case of the Bolognas, the comedy depends on the exactness of their ethnic idioms. "I'm entitled to be loved," Pandora says in her encounter group. There's not much that color can do for this kind of comedy, or black and white either, except to allow one to listen in peace. Robert B. Bean, who directed the picture, also shot it, though he has done his best to keep his eye on the action and has shot the picture expertly. He hasn't solved this problem. He gets some scenes to work well by using realistically tight spaces, a family dining room at New Year's, with the extra chairs that no one can get past, the shoebox-size nightclub, and the decor in the homes is blessedly uncondescending. But the busy work of razzle-dazzle effects to keep the picture from being visually monotonous is merely an acceptable style, not one that grows out of the material. The material here is so organically developed in every other way, with characters who are emanations of the actor and actress playing them, that the movie almost qualifies as a minor comedy classic. It's when the other elements are so right that one regrets the peculiar problems of modern American color comedies. I don't think the all-purpose solution now would be to go back to black and white, even if there were no TV sale to worry about, and even if the large audience hadn't grown to expect color and to prefer it. A big city comedy such as this one might seem too drab in black and white. It might even be intolerable, because the color helps to gloss over the urban ugliness and the caricatured urban types. Chances are that if it were made in black and white, the cinematography would need more razzle-dazzle to make it visually bearable. A simplified spectrum might work for some types of comedy, or perhaps a stylization emphasizing primary colors, like the stylization Godard used in some of his 60s films, though that certainly wouldn't be right for this particular film. It may be that in emphasizing, or more exactly, exploiting grossness, the modern urban comedies have created an aesthetic problem that can't be satisfactorily solved. As comedy has become harsh and freaky, colors have become an enrichment system, yet color used as prettification is a commercial solution, not an aesthetic one. That's why Made for Each Other is an emotionally satisfying comedy, but is not aesthetically satisfying. Published in The New Yorker, December 25th, 1971. Thank you for listening. And please like and subscribe. And have a good day.